All right. 30 Days to Better Critical Thinking. Day 15. Be fair, not selfish. Human thinking is naturally self-serving or selfish. Selfishness is a native, not learned, human tendency, though it can be encouraged or discouraged by one's culture and the groups to which one belongs. Humans naturally tend to look out for number one. Unfortunately, that often means we are unfair to persons 2 and 3. Selfishness is that detestable vice which no one will forgive in others, and no one is without in himself. H. W. Beecher. You don't have to be selfish. It is possible to develop as a fair person and thinker. You can learn to give significant attention to the desires, needs, and rights of others. You do not need to cheat yourself to be fair. When you think fair-mindedly, you consider the rights and needs of others as equivalent to your own. You forego the pursuit of your desires when fair play requires it. You learn how to overcome your selfishness. You learn how to step outside your own point of view and into others' points of view. There's an old saying, step into the moccasins of another person. You value fair-mindedness as a personal characteristic worth pursuing. So be on the lookout for selfishness today, in yourself and in others. Notice how often people justify the selfishness. Notice how often they object to the selfishness of others. Notice closely about the role of selfishness in your life. Note how hard it is to be fair to those you have been taught to consider evil. Notice how difficult it is to define and identify your own unfair behavior, because the mind naturally hides what it doesn't want to face. Here are some strategies for developing as a fair-minded thinker. Recognize anew every day that you, like every other human, are naturally self-centered. That you are primarily interested in how the world and everything in it can serve you. Only by bringing this idea to the forefront of your thinking can you begin to get command of your selfishness and self-centered tendencies. Be on the alert to catch yourself in the mental act of self-deception. For example, ignoring others' viewpoints. Remember that all humans engage in self-deception. Exceptional persons recognize the tendency in themselves and consistently work to take command of it. Log each time you do something selfish. Reward yourself for noticing your selfishness and not letting yourself off the hook. Target the excuses you use to rationalize self-serving behavior. Write down in detail when and how you are selfish. Then write down the point of view of those who are affected by your selfishness. Consider how you can avoid such behavior in future similar situations. You might use some of those following formats to log your selfish episodes. Today I was selfish in the following way, blank. My selfish but unspoken thinking was as follows, blank. Now be as honest as possible. Do not allow your mind to get away with self-deception as you detail your thinking. My selfishness affected the following person or people in the following ways, blank. In the future, I can avoid being selfish or self-centered in a similar situation by thinking and behaving in the following rational ways, blank. Take every opportunity you can to think broadly about issues that involve multiple viewpoints. Now remember, we talked about questions of fact and choice and judgment, and this is a choice of judgment. There are multiple viewpoints. Assume that your mind will tend to favor whatever perspective you hold in any given situation. Force your mind, if necessary, to consider other relevant ways of looking at the issue or situation and to represent those viewpoints accurately rather than in a distorted way. We often think we're speaking in somebody else's viewpoint, but realistically, we're just trying to justify our own. We're not really looking through their viewpoint. We are basically setting up kind of a straw man kind of an argument where we're misrepresenting their viewpoint to support our own. Questions you can ask to foster fair-mindedness in your thinking. Am I being fair to so-and-so right now? And am I putting my desires ahead of the rights and the needs of others? You know, there's a difference between a want and a need, I always say. A need can be satisfied by something, and a want is never really satisfied. You always want more. You always want something different. That's the difference between a want and a need. Now, if I'm putting my desires ahead of the rights and needs of others, if so, what precisely am I after? And whose rights or needs am I ignoring or even violating? When I think about the way I live, how often do I put myself in others' shoes? I think that's interesting too, because when we think about things, we often think about people who we see as less well off than we are. But in our minds, we kind of think of ourselves as kings of the world. So put yourself in other people's shoes, not just people who are worse off, but people who are better off. And maybe you'll even understand why their thinking becomes the way it is. Not to condone it, but to understand it. Do I have a selfish interest in not seeing the truth in this situation? And if I face the truth, will I have to change my behavior? Do I think broadly enough to be fair? How many alternative perspectives have I really explored? What national, religious, political, ideological, and social points of view have I considered? And this is the challenge. Whoever you are, think about the things that you don't think about. Like we always think about putting yourself in the shoes of people who are less well off or people who are immigrants or whatever. Well, try the radical thought of putting yourself in the shoes of some rich oligarch or tyrant, or put yourself in the shoes of some crazy person who's just hateful about people. Why did they get that way? I'm not saying there's a risk. Don't become that way. But you might understand how to talk to people like that if you put yourself in their shoes. Usually hatred comes from fear. I remember hearing that hatred is a smoke where burns the fire of fear. In what types of situations do I tend to be selfish? With my spouse, my children, my friends, my coworkers. So that's the end of day 15. And as I said before, I'm starting to put those on the YouTube in order so people can either go in order if they want to, or refer back to one of the topics that they want to understand a little bit more about or take another look at. See you later and have a good day.